All right, hello everyone. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've decided to do a couple preliminary videos for the AWD 1100 C# programming class, which will be taught online as part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Website Development, or AWD program, for the summer 2023 semester. The book I'm planning on using is Murachs C# 8th edition by Ann Boehm and Joel Murach. All right. And this is a little different than the way I wanted to do this. And I just wanted to mention to you what I wanted to do was to get the instructor materials and do some lectures based on the PowerPoint slides that they provide. All right. Well, the instructor materials won't be ready until right around the time the class starts and possibly even a week into the class. So I'm just going to go with the book that I have right now, which is the 8th edition. So I'll be going with that, and that's what we'll be talking about. And I'll be bouncing back and forth between here and looking at other things, etc. So Chapter 1 on page 3, the chapter starts with C# programming by introducing the .NET platform, the languages that make up that platform, and the Visual Studio development environment. You won't become an expert, but what will happen in here is you'll be introduced to Visual Studio. So you can see we've got an intro to the .NET development, a tour of the IDE, and how to test a project. So we'll do all this stuff that's shown in here in this chapter. Okay, if you're not aware of Murach books, if you've never seen them, the way they're typically set up is on the page that's on the left, which is the even number page. As you see right here, you get a bunch of text. And on the page on the right, you typically get images, tables, etc. Then usually at the bottom, like a summary of what was going on. All right. Okay. So as they mentioned in here, this book teaches C# by showing you how to create desktop applications. All right. That's what we're going to be doing in here. We're going to be making both console applications. All right. Which means they're going to look a lot like this. So when you run them, they'll look a lot like this. Whoops, not there. Let me get that smaller. A lot like this. In other words, they'll have a black background and white text, and there won't be anything graphical in them. Now, we'll spend a little bit of time at the beginning of the semester going through those. All right? And then afterwards, we'll get into GUI, or graphical user interface programs. But then when we get to about Chapter 12, we'll go back and we'll look some more at the console. That may not make a lot of sense right now, but it hopefully will when we get to that point. All right, we're going to be making mainly Windows Forms apps, and you'll see these as we get going, okay? Now, it says besides desktop apps, you can use C# to create web apps. That is not this class, all right? That is the last class that students take, or typically the last class that students take in the AWD program, and that is AWD 1115, Database-Driven Web Application Development, where you learn how to use C# to build ASP.NET Core Model View Controller applications. All right. In fact, this is the book we typically use in there. Okay. So very shortly, we're going to be building applications that look like the one you see on your screen. All right. Not a lot to it, really. And it may look like a lot, but once you start building it, and I show you what to do here, and we'll build maybe this first one or one like this together, what's going to happen is you'll end up being able to build an interface like this literally in a matter of minutes. And anyone can learn to build an interface. But for a programmer, it's not so much building the interface as it is making the program do what you want it to do, in this case, when either the calculate button or the exit button is clicked. All right? So again, we've already talked about this. We're going to be basically making in here Windows Forms. Don't worry about the Windows Presentation Foundation. Don't worry about the Universal Windows platform. All right. And it's the same kind of thing on the bottom. We're not doing anything with ASP in here. Probably what we'll do at the end of this semester is maybe in the last week, we'll build a simple ASP.NET application so you can see what it's like. All right. Okay. A desktop application, as mentioned right here, is an application that runs directly on the user's computer, as opposed to a web app that runs on a web server. And again, if that confuses you, don't let it. All right, just know that we're building desktop applications. Those desktop applications that we're building, we're going to be using Visual Studio. That's going to be our editor, and actually it's what's referred to here as an IDE, or an integrated development environment. And what that means is it's kind of like an editor on steroids. And what I mean by that is not only is it an editor, but it allows you to do a lot of other things as well. All right. This book is going to use the Visual Studio Community Edition. That's what we're going to use. That's what we're going to download, okay, in just a few minutes. Now, the reason for that is it's free. There are a couple other versions that are provided, but they're not free. All the software that you use in this program is free software. All right. Okay. All three editions support C#. That's the language that we're going to be using. Okay. It says when you install Visual Studio, okay, Visual Studio provides support for C#. In addition, you can choose what versions of the .NET framework or .NET Core you want to install. You'll see all this stuff. All right. What I'd like to do is I think I'll go through the first chapter here. I've already got Visual Studio loaded on my machine. But after I get done, we'll go and we'll take a quick look at the appendix that's at the back of the book that explains how you do all this stuff. All right. Now, this runs best, in my opinion, for whatever that is or is not worth on a Microsoft Windows machine. Can you get this to work if you've got a Mac or an Apple machine? The answer is yes. But typically there's more work involved. Okay, again, we'll be using the Community Edition because it's free, not the Professional and not the Enterprise. We'll be coding solely in C#. All right. When I started teaching in the .NET framework, and this was many years ago, I was at a different college, we taught Visual Basic.NET. Now it's C#. All right, again, Visual Studio is what's referred to as an IDE, or an integrated development environment. Okay? And as it says, when you install Visual Studio, you can choose to install SQL Server, Express, Local DB. We will, because that's something that you'll need for the AWD 1115 class. Okay? Now, I'm just going to very quickly just show you that if I go out here to visualstudio.com/download, all right, this is where you go to actually download what you need. And you'll notice these are not free, but you can have a free trial. The biggest difference between the Community Edition and the Professional and Enterprise Edition is the Professional and Enterprise have some additional functionality, as you'd guess, because they're not free. But a lot of them have to do with reports that you can create. And it's a lot of stuff that we would not be working on, all right, or be using. Now, those of you who were in the AWD 1000 class, the Web Development Technologies class, last spring, you'll know that we used Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio is much more powerful than Visual Studio Code is. All right, so they're not the same thing, and I just want you to know that. All right, but again, that's what we're going to be using. I've already got it on my machine. Okay, all righty. Now, they give you a little bit of a history, and they talk about the main components in here. Let's just take a look. All right. This isn't the kind of thing, other than possibly on your first written test, that you'll have to worry about. The closer that you get to the top of this figure here, the closer you are to the human being using the computer. The farther down you get, the closer you're getting to the machine itself. All right. So the reason I'm telling you that is you will deal directly with C#. All right. You will deal directly with the stuff that's in here, the .NET framework. All right. But you're not going to directly work with the common language runtime, the compiler, and the operating system. And that's kind of what they explain in here. And again, I don't mean at all to diminish the importance of these things. And as I mentioned, they may be on your written tests. I'm just not going to take the time to go over them, at least not right now. All right. So the Visual Studio IDE. So here's a picture of what it's going to look like. All right. In fact, why don't I just bring it up? So this is the kind of thing that I'm showing you now that we're going to be doing here. After you download Visual Studio, it'll come up. You won't have anything here. I've just got a lot of projects that I've created and that other students have created, etc. But you'll come in here, and again, yours will be empty, and you'll say create a new project. All right? And then we're going to do this in one of two ways. We're either going to be creating a console application, or we're going to be creating a Windows Forms application. For now, let's just type in here Windows Form, all right? And you'll see that the list of things I have is a lot smaller than it was originally, all right? We don't want anything with ASP.NET Core, all right? But when I start looking through here, I believe that the one we're going to want, we'll see, is going to be Windows Forms App.NET Framework. And we'll look at this together as a class. But it says C# here. So I'm going to click on that one, and I'm going to click Next. And then it says a couple things here. Okay? It says, what do you want to call your project? Well, I'm just going to make a test project right now. So I'm going to call it just that. I'm going to call it Test Project. And it says, where do you want to save this? All right? And there's different ways that you can do this, but I'm going to tell it to save it on the desktop. And if possible, I'm going to see if it'll put it into a folder called Test Project. Now, I may get an error when I do that because technically that folder does not exist. All right? And then they say, what do you want to call your solution? And I'm going to call this Test Project Solution. All right? Now, if this works, it's going to create a new folder on my desktop. I don't want it to be called Hello. Let's just call it Test. Okay? And I'm going to click Create. Now, this is very similar to what you see here. They're not identical, but this is what we're going to look at right now. Let's see if it made a folder called Test. There it is. And there are a lot of files already in here. Doesn't look like it, but when you look, all right, there's a solution file, and there's a bunch of stuff that's already been created in here. I want to take a minute and show you this. If it makes little to no sense, that's actually to be expected right now. All right, but you'll remember that it asked me for the name of my project at the top, and I typed in Test Project. Then it asked me for the name of the solution, and I typed in Test Project Solution. And it said, where do you want to save that? And I said to a folder named Test Project, or Test, I should say. So there it is. All right. Now, with that said, when you take a look in here, this does not look exactly like it did in our textbook. But I'm going to click View up here, and I'm going to try to make it look a little bit more like it. And I'm going to click Toolbox. All right. These are all the tools that I can double click on or click and drag, and I can put over here. So this is my toolbox over here. This is what's called my form design area. This is what's called my output area. This is called the Solution Explorer. And this down here, and I usually make them so they're about the same size. is called the properties window. I'm going to say it again, and you don't have to memorize these. Toolbox, form design area, all right, output area, solution explorer, and properties window. Let's see if we can make something that looks at least similar to what was in the book right here. So what I'm going to do, just so you see this, I oftentimes do this kind of stuff. Maybe it's silly, but this is the way I often do things, is I'm going to grab just this chunk right here. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. And there it is. So I'm going to attempt to have us make this right now. All right. So we've got, again, it'll look pretty much like it, maybe not exactly, but we'll be working on it right now. All right. So I'm going to come back to this, and let me go back into here. You'll notice the first thing it says up here is it says calculate investment. That's the text that we have on our form. So let's do that first. So let me make this bigger. And again, the text on the form, typically I rename the form first. So I'm going to call this FRM test. Okay. And what did it say again? Calculate investment. Calculate investment. So I'm going to come down to text, and it's going to say here, calculate investment. Spelled calculate wrong. And it's kind of hard to see, but now it says there, calculate investment. All right. Next, it's got what's called a group box right here with two radio buttons in it. So I'm going to make that. All right, I'm going to find a group box, which is right here. There that is. And in that group box are two what are referred to as radio buttons. All right. This is all alphabetized, so I'm going down to the R's. And there is one radio button. And here is another radio button. All right. This thing up here, this is a group box. So I'm going to call this GRP for group box, calculate. And according to this, what it says is the word calculate, and then this says future value, and that says monthly investment. So I want this to say calculate. And it now does. And I want this to be a radio button, which usually you start with just rad. All right. And I want one of them to say future value and the other one to say monthly investment. So future value. And again, this one for the text, it should say future value. And the other one here, I want it to say monthly investment. And that'll be called RAD monthly investment. All right. Now this is a little bit hard to see, so even though they don't show it like this in our text, I'm going to change the background color here, so it's a little easier for you to see what's going on. So I'm going to go down to back color, and we'll make it yellow. Now maybe I made it worse, but hopefully that's a little easier for you to see. I'll also take what's shown here, and I'm going to make it a little bigger font. So let's make it about 14 point and bold. And I like using Arial because it seems to come out the best. So there's calculate. And there's future value and monthly investment. So that I think that that's a little bit better, easier to see. All right. So what else is there? These right here are called labels. These right here are called text boxes. You'll notice this one label is gray, which means it's read-only. Okay, so we've got monthly investment, yearly interest rate, number of years, and future value. So let's make 4 of these labels. And when you make them, they're kind of hamstrung as far as their size. So you're going to come over here and I'm going to find where it says auto size and change that. There we go. All right. And I'm going to change the size again on this. I think we made the other ones 14. There we go. So I'm going to make 4 of these. Again, we'll do all this together as a class, but I just wanted you to kind of see what's going on here, okay? All right, so we've got those, and then I'm going to also want to have 4 text boxes that go along with them. Well, that didn't exactly do what I wanted it to do. There we go. Make that a little bit bigger. And I'm going to make this, again, I'm going to make that so that it's 14, bold, and Arial. You can see that changed the size of this as well. Now the good news is I've almost done building this interface. I need 2 buttons, so let me put those in here. And in the book they show 2 buttons. I think I'm going to make 3. And again, we'll make the size bigger. All right. And like I said, we'll have 3 of these. There. And all I'm trying to show you is probably in 5 minutes, I built the entire interface. Now, let's pretty it up, make it work, etc. All right, when I say make it work, we're not going to program the buttons yet, okay? But we'll look at everything else that's in here. So again, these things said, oops, these things in here said, try that again. The first one, monthly investment, then yearly interest rate. So this says monthly investment. So there's that one. And we'll change this too. And this next one says yearly interest rate. All right. Okay, the next one down here says we've got number of years and then future value. So this is number of years. And the last one says future value. All right, let's pretty these up a little bit. And what I mean is I'm going to make sure they're right justified. So I'm going to tell the alignment to go here. There we go. It's a little nicer, I think. Okay, it doesn't look great, but it's not terrible either. This first button I'm going to call Calculate. So it'll be BTN for button. Calculate. The second one will say clear, which we don't have on our picture, and it'll be BTN clear. And the last one will be exit. So it'll be BTN exit. Now, my interface pretty much looks the way I want it to look right now. It's not perfect, but it doesn't look bad either. So I'm going to do a Control A to highlight everything. And then I'm going to come in and grab any one of these I want and right mouse click and say Lock Controls. Now my interface is locked in place. It won't move anywhere. So I can't take these and click them and move them anyplace. Okay? All right. And we'll do a couple things in here just so you can see the power of this. All right? So I'm not going to do anything with this. But I'm going to program these two buttons so that they do something. So when I click clear, what I want is I don't want this chosen. I don't want this chosen. I want this to be empty, this to be empty, this to be empty, and this to be empty. And I want my cursor to go right there. Okay, how do I do that? I just tell it exactly what I want it to do. All right, and what I mean is, this is what I'm going to tell it here. So I'm going to say rad future value dot checked equal false. That'll mean it won't be checked. And then rad, what was the other one? Was future value and monthly investment, I think. Yep. Dot checked equal false. All right. And then next we'll have txt, and these are our four fields. So we had monthly investment. We had yearly interest rate. We have number of years. And we have future value. Now, this editor is a little quirky, and what I mean is, if I want, I can line everything up here. And I am a little quirky in this way. I usually like to do this. But notice what happens if I come back. I'm going to remove this, put that back. See how it moves back? It's kind of a pain if you want things to really line up. All right? So that's that one. Let's do the next button that's in here. All right, and I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to grab some code that I always give students, so you will get it. You will get it. All right. You will get this code on day one. But let's take a look at what we put in here right now. All right, let me save this. And let me run the program. We'll pretty it up even more in just a couple minutes. But there it is. So you'll notice that's checked. So let's check the other one. Let's put in something in here, and in here, and in here, and in here. I'm going to click clear. This should clear, that should clear, these should all clear. I forgot to put my cursor there. But let's see if everything else works. Okay? The only thing I forgot was to put my cursor right there. Now when I click exit, it says, do you really want to exit the program? If I say yes, it will. If I say no, it'll stay there. So we now have two buttons that are working in there. All right, so let's just change this to txt what was it? Monthly investment dot text. I don't want to say dot text. Dot focus. Okay. So let's see if that fixed, and if now my cursor is going to go into there. So I'll click here. All right. And my cursor is right here right now. I click clear, everything cleared, and there's my cursor. All right. Let's do a couple more things quickly, then we'll go back to the book. The first is I'd like this to appear in the middle of the screen. So I go down to where it says, I click on the forum and I go down to where it says start position. And I choose center screen. I also want it set up so that when I hit tab, it goes here, 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 then here, then here, then here, then here, then here. So I go to view. Try it again. I go to view, tab order, and I want it to go 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's not really mandatory that I do these, but I'll do them anyway. All right, so let's run the program again. So let me do one more view, tab order to make that go away. And let me do a file, save all, and run the program. Notice where my cursor is now. And when I hit tab, what happens? Yes, it didn't go here like I thought, but it's okay. All right, and notice it's now in the middle of the screen as well. Now, I'm not going to take the time to program this button right now. We're not going to do that. All right, we will, but just not right now. All right, let's go back into the book. So, I've already shown you a few things. This, again, is our toolbox, and we can either double-click on anything in here to put it in here, or we can single-click and drag it over. All right, there's probably even other ways of doing it. Those are the two I use the most often. This is our actual form area, our form designer, and that's where we paint what we want in there. This is our Solution Explorer that shows us all the available files we have in the program. And this is the Properties window. If you remember, that's where I went in to change the text in the buttons and change the text in the labels, etc. Okay? So, how is this application compiled and run? The easiest way to compile and run the program is for us to just come there and click this green button that says Start. Now, when you do that, this is what happens. Do you have to worry about it? Only if they ask you questions about it on your written test. But this all goes on behind the scenes. So as it says, I've already shown you this. I used Visual Studio. I created a project. The project had source files or files in it. There's other things that we can put in there as well that we'll get into later on in the class. The compiler compiles or translates what we put in into what's called MISL, which is Microsoft's intermediate language. All right? And then that MISL code is run by the .NET CLR or Common Language Runtime. It's all things that go on in the background that you really don't have to worry about. All right, so here's your tour of the IDE. And as I mentioned, you saw how we started a project. There are different ways of starting a project. Let me show you two of them. All right, I'm going to take my program that I've got running here. I'm going to do a file, save all. Then I'm going to do a file, exit, and get out. All right, now there's two ways that I can start my program up again. I can go back like I just did into here, and now you'll notice it says Test Project Solution. That's the one we just created. And I can click on that, and boom, it's up. there you go. All right, that's one way of doing it. And then there's another way of doing it as well, and that is I can take my folder, double click on my folder. There's a folder in there. Double click on that and find my file that ends with .sln, which means it's a solution file. If I click on that, it also brings up my program. Okay, so I just showed you two ways of doing the same thing. All right, and when you start up a new project, you do the create new project. That's all explained in here. All right, I showed you how to open and close an existing project. Always, even though it should save for you automatically anyway, it's always considered a good idea to save when you're all done. All right. In this open project or solution dialog, that's what I showed you, how you can click on the solution file. Okay. The form designer, again, is the area in which we put things. We draw things out. Now, this is a really busy slide, but again, as I mentioned to you, there's the toolbox. There's our form designer. There's our solution explorer. There's our properties window. And up here, this is the toolbar. And above the toolbar is the menu. That pretty much is everything that's there. All right. There'll be things that are in here that as we go on, I'll say, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about that. Or now you probably know enough where I can show you this type of thing. Okay. All right. When you work with this IDE, what you'll notice, and let's bring up our project again, and I'm going to bring up the code for the project. I can do that in multiple ways. I can right mouse click on my form and choose view code, just like that. Or I think it's the F2 key up on top. Nope, doesn't like that. Well, and I wish I wouldn't have done that. It has to do with the fact that with the recording software that I'm using right now. But I'm just going to do it like this and view the code. You'll notice that this stuff is in different colors. All right, keywords are typically put in blue here. All right, so false is a keyword, private and void are keywords. Certain things that you created in the system are kind of a teal color. And when you create comments, as we'll see, I'm just going to put one in here right now. They're in green. So this is my first program. Okay, they're in green. So the stuff is all color coded is what I'm telling you. Okay, all right. This whole thing is referred to as the code editor. I'm not sure why it doesn't want me to go to the next page. I'm still here. Okay. See if this, oh my goodness. The software that I have to look at the book is very different kind of software, and it locks up sometimes. You won't have to worry about, oh, I lost my internet connection. All right. All right, sorry about that. What happened was when I hit the F2 key, foolishly, the software that I'm using to record this put me into airplane mode, so I lost my internet connection for a minute. All right, let's see if everything else is still working here. Okay. Now, the Solution Explorer, again, shows you the different files that you have available in your project. We'll go over these, but I think it makes more sense for when we go over these and how we go over these that you actually have a program up and running on your own so you can take a look at it. All right, so we will do that. All right, the Visual Studio Windows, I'm going to show you something that's going to happen. Everybody does this. All right, and that is this. You come in here and you're looking at a project. Go back to my design mode here. And now you start moving stuff around because you can. So I take this thing right here and I move it over there. I take this and I move it over here someplace. And I take this one and I move it over there someplace, etc. And now it's all goofed up. And it's like, oh my gosh, what the heck did I do? You'll do this at one time or another. Everybody does. So to fix it, you go over to Tools, and you go down to, what is it? Import and Export Settings. Let's do that again. Tools, Import and Export Settings. And you go back to where it says Reset All Settings. You click Next. And you tell it not to save what you've got now. Just return to where it currently was. Click Next again. Make sure it says Visual C#, C with a pound sign. Click Finish. It'll take a second or two. Doesn't usually take this long, but let's see. This is interesting because typically it pops right back within a matter of seconds. It says, okay, I'm going to tell it to close, and boom, everything is back to the way it was. You say, well, what about this stuff? I just have to click View and tell it to show my toolbox again. So there that is. And I can do another view and tell it that I want it down here to show my properties window. So there they are. Okay, and we'll go over this again also in class because you're going to do that sooner or later. You'll be playing around or whatever. All right, so that's how to rearrange the windows. How to change the .NET version used by a project. They show you how you can come in here and do this. I'm not going to go and run through that project properties window now. We'll look at it at another time. It's not really that important because we're not going to have to change ours. Now to test and build a project, I already showed you that. All right. Now, I don't remember what the formula is for these monthly investments and the future value. Otherwise, we'd finish this up in here. All right. But how to build a project without running it, we could do that if we wanted to. So we could come in here, we could come in here where our program is running and just click Build Solution. And then down here, if there's errors, it's going to show them to us. All right, and I think we might have to do a view here. Should be another output window or something in here. Well, not sure where that is. All right. But if we have errors, they're going to appear down here. Let's put an error in here so you can see it. All right. I'm going to remove this semicolon that has to go there. Now I'm going to try to run the program again. And you'll notice it says, hey, there were errors. When you get this, it says, would you like to continue? Just say no. All right, and there's my error window. And when I double click on the error, it usually shows you just about exactly where the error is. So if I put that back there, boom, now the error is gone. Okay. All right. And that's it for this chapter. So let's quickly, all right, let's see where I am time-wise in here. All right, we're already at 45 minutes, so I think I'm going to stop. And when I come back, which will be just in a moment, all right, let me come in here and put in this. I'm going to jump into Appendix A, which says how to set up Windows for this book. All right. And so again, I will come back. It's not very long, but it tells you how to install the files for the book and how to install Visual Studio, etc. And we'll take a look at that in just a couple moments. All right. See you in a few.